In this episode of Systemize Your Success, I'm actually being interviewed by Josh Keegan on the Ultimate FD podcast. I'm sharing with you because I thought Josh did a great job of covering a lot of essential topics that I'm often asked about behind the scenes and in conversations, and he was able to drag a load of good information out of me, so I thought I'd share it with you today. We covered topics such as improving communication efficiency using automation and calendars and software tools, about how the importance of documenting tasks in order to free yourself from being a slave to your business, about hiring and working with remote workers, and a bunch of other useful stuff besides. So here you go. I hope you enjoy listening to this interview where I am the interviewee on this occasion, being interviewed, as I said, by Josh Keegan. Enjoy. So the question is this: how do entrepreneurs like us who don't have an endless supply of cash, how do we leverage the best apps, virtual assistants, automation tools and systems to scale our businesses, increase our profits and have more time to do what we love to do each day? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. My name's Dr. Steve Day and this is Systemize Your Success.
So Stephen, if you're going to share the biggest learning you've had in the last 3 months regarding virtual teams, creating these virtual companies, creating these virtual team members that work all over the world and run businesses in the UK or worldwide, what would it be?
I think ultimately it's the same lesson which I've probably learned many times over the years, but over the past couple of months, a few things have happened, both internally, but especially with clients as well. And it's just reminded me how important systems are. And what I mean by that is that if we as business owners have stuff in people's heads that only they know how to do, that leaves us in a really vulnerable position. And so ultimately, when we're small business owners, we don't have duplicates of knowledge, within companies and departments, etc., and big teams. So getting stuff out people's heads and down in a way that anyone can do it without the involvement of the business owner or the other knowledgeable worker is absolutely key to us not leading or finding ourselves in really sticky situations where we end up as business owners jumping back in just to save the day. So that has been,
that's often the thing that holds a lot of people back, isn't it? It's like you often hear when people want to scale and they want to delegate, they want to do less. It's like, actually the problem is everything's in their head. It's like, it's there. So they're a massive bottleneck and they can't physically give enough information to enough people at any time. That's why it falls down. Like, what are some practical ways then that you found to actually get that out? Is it how do you get it out of the entrepreneur's head and into spreadsheets, documents? How do you do that in practice?
Fundamentally, this is like one-on-one of what we teach in all of our coaching. And it's really getting people from this state of only I can do it. No one can do it. No one can do it as good as me. And all these beliefs that we have as a solopreneur. And the more that, I've delegated over the years, the more I realize that actually, if we have a good way of getting stuff out of our heads and hand over to somebody else, they have more time to think about it and do it. And actually often they'll end up doing better than we could because we're spinning too many plates and trying to do too much stuff. We're always moving on to the next thing. And I've got an ADHD brain, so I move on to the next thing very quickly. And if I've not got it out and documented, it just disappears. And all of that work I would have done is wasted. So this is something that for my own survival has been absolutely key to get a hold of and get it done in such a way that I can rapidly get stuff out. And for me, the two real tools that I think are absolutely essential that as business owners, would be foolish not to learn how to use them. And they're game changing for our clients when we teach them. And the first one's really simple. People probably already use some version of it. And that's some sort of screen capture tool, something where you can literally just record your screen as you're doing a task, talk yourself through it. So you have your microphone on, talk yourself through it. And that is a video guide, a detailed video guide showing someone how to do something. It doesn't matter if it's not polished. It doesn't matter how it's not professional or anything like that. That's not the point. It's just that if we repeat that process and get our staff to do the same, it means we've now captured the how. So if that staff member now goes off sick or quits, or we want to promote them, that we actually have got a copy or record of how that work was done. And then you can go on and document it and create all detailed guides and all the rest if you want to later. That's the nice to have. But the must have is actually that information retained in the business. That's number one. It's just like simple video capture, screen capture. And the second is flowcharts. So learning how to map your thought processes and the decision trees or the decisions that are made within a business to get to the result that you want consistently. That's something you can do really effectively and visually with flowcharts. And there's loads of techniques you can use, but the one we use is Business Process Mapping Notation 2.0, so BPMN 2.0. And the reason we use a standard way of mapping, and that just basically says this box is a certain thing, this triangle is a certain thing, and it just teaches, or it gives a standard way of writing down thought processes and doing it in a standard way and just taking like 10 minutes to learn the basics of a standard way and then building on it over time means that your business is getting systemized in a standard way and you're not making it up as you're going along. So you can hire somebody in who, with a rudimentary understanding of flowcharts, can now understand how your business works without you having to then teach them how to read all of your crazy flowcharts. And I've been there and made all my setups, so own stuff up and had loads of keys saying this means this and this means that. But actually, when I just scrapped it all, started from scratch, learned a standard way of doing it, it simplified everything. And I mean to get other people to come and build flowcharts for me without having to train them how to do it, because there's already tons and tons of training on how to do all this stuff. So keep it simple with videos and just spend a small amount of time learning how to do flowcharts in a standard way with my two big recommendations.
I think what you're talking about there is quite advanced, because I think, and it's exactly what the way we should be thinking about it, because I think most people that listen to this podcast know that they should do Loom. I did an episode a few weeks ago. I said, right, if you're not using Loom to create, videos and training guides, when you're doing stuff, it's like the easiest thing on the planet, and it's like it's never been easier to leverage. But I think the way you think about it, which I love, it's like even more advanced. It's like you're thinking about how you can get other people to create that leverage for you. So you're thinking about how you can do a Loom or a video screen recording software, and then your team members can also do the same. So you want to get them to do it as well. Then you can create a flowchart, but you also want it so simple that your team members can create flowcharts too. And that's where the real leverage comes, isn't it? I think big game changer for me was when I first recruited somebody that could create processes. I was like, wow, that is what I needed, because the bit I'm finding exhausting is having to, I can get people to run the processes. The person that comes on that can actually create the process, it's like that's where the magic happens, because no entrepreneur actually enjoys doing this stuff, do they really? Like no one really, okay, apart from yourself, 99.99% of entrepreneurs don't go, oh great, I get to write a process on how to manage maintenance in my portfolio now. Brilliant. I can't wait to do that. It's like, so if you can get your team to do it for you, that's where the magic happens.
Totally. And it's like one of the first systems I ever created was aptly named the System for Creating Systems. And so when somebody joins our company, and it's like one of the first things that we give to our clients so they can give it to their staff, is the first thing they learn is how to document what they do in such a way that it will be done in the same way by everybody. And I think if you're the type of entrepreneur that really just loves just like showing people how to do stuff and getting on with it and like throwing tasks at people, letting them figure it out and bouncing ideas, and that's fine. You don't need to become a systems geek like me to benefit from all this, but you do need to have somebody, as you just alluded to, you need somebody in the business that can document stuff. And so if you are the kind of person that actually just works better verbally, just basically winging it and just getting on and figuring that stuff out, that's fine. But then make sure the person you're doing that with has the capacity, the time, the knowledge to be able to then create your systems for you. Because when that person leaves, not if, when that person leaves, you're basically going to be back to square one again and doing that whole onboarding and training process all over again, unless you've actually created a training system so that the next person that comes in can just follow the guides, get on with stuff, and then you support them. And that's a far less of a management. And it's not just for us business owners, which obviously that's often where we start, is like, how do I stop getting dragged into all the training? But as soon as you start getting layers of management in and you've got somebody else managing staff members, you don't want their time spend their whole time just like training new staff. Like, that's such an inefficient way of working, because you're basically replicating something time and time again, and new staff come and go, especially in the early days, like in the early staff part of the staff journey. Like, people may say a month and you just get rid of them because they're no good. They may say 2 months and then decide they don't want to work with you anymore. So that the beginning stage was the the most costly time for the business owner is also the most risky, if you like, with regards to employment. So if we can create systems to get people up to speed in without any human involvement, we can then after that period of we know we want to work together, great, they like us, we like them, it's working. Now we can put some more energy and resource into making that person brilliant, but we haven't wasted energy and time and resources in getting them up to that just the decision point they're going to stick around.
How do you actually get your team to do this? Because I think it's all very well saying, oh, right, get your team to build systems and record looms of everything they're doing, but it is actually quite hard to make it happen in practice. What things do you say or do to make them understand the importance of it and make sure they start documenting things? I imagine in your business, it's like it's just the way you do things. But for somebody like me that doesn't get their team to do that, or to be fair, I do now, but for people that maybe don't have any of that in their business and they want to get that started, how do you actually make that happen?
Um, Ultimately, it's after a while, it becomes like you say, the way you do things, because that is the way things are done. So that's sort of like the way I do it isn't really relevant. It's like you say, it's like, how do you do this from like day one? Like you don't have any systems, or they're all just basically, bits and bobs all over the place. And ultimately you need to create like I did, or get one. And we've got a free resource that I can give you to that people can download on how to record tasks really simply and effectively to get people to do your work. But it's literally like I mentioned before, the simplest way to record what you're doing is the way you're doing it, is while you're doing it, sorry. And literally, so hit record while you're doing the task. And then how you then convert that into a standard or SOP, a standard operating procedure, or a operations manual. That's the system for creating systems, if you like. It's like you just have to create once a video that says, this is how I want my tasks documented. This is an example of the finished product. This is an example of the raw material that's coming in, like a video. And that system then becomes something that you can give to every single staff member that joins as part of their core training to say, look, this is how we record videos. This is how we document them. And it's that which then allows you to not have to do that ever again. And that saves hours and hours and hours every week, probably of my life still, is by having the ability for me just to throw an idea at somebody, then figure it out, and then record it. Whereas before, it would be me doing all of those things to the point of recording it, and then maybe I'd get them to help, document and dot the I's and cross the T's or whatever. But so yeah, spending that time, or that's one of the things again on our coaching. That's like fundamental, like the first things we teach people is because that is how you basically save thousands of hours a year, or hundreds of hours a year, I should say, for you as an individual, is by having that simple system in place.
We want to save hundreds of hours per year. Like that system for creating systems. Yeah, I mean that's gonna be an absolute game changer, isn't it? So just to get it clear, basically I've got to go away and say to my team, right, moving forward, this is how you document and turn a action into a process. And this is how you then log that process so it gets done every single week without fail.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
there's a few parts in that. Like, so for example, the logging of the process to get it done every single week. Like, so something that we call the task matrix. And I should have mentioned a couple of podcasts. So I've got a podcast as well, Systemize Your Success, and I cover all of this stuff that I'm going to talk about today, that we are talking about today, in detail on there. And so I'm trying to think. There was an episode I was going to share with you. I'll find it in a second while I'm talking. But the record method. There we go. So episode 135 is basically about how you do that recording process in detail. So how we teach our clients to do that. That's exactly what we share on there. And the second part of it is the delegation part. So it's how to delegate work effectively. And if you're using email to delegate, or text messaging, or WhatsApp, or whatever, then you're just missing out on a huge, huge benefit of using a proper task management tool. And these are things like Trello, the one we use is Asana. There's also ClickUp. There's it doesn't really matter which one you use. Some I arguably are slightly better for various reasons. But if you're already familiar with any of these things, just stick with it. And just the idea of having what we call a task matrix, or a task board in simple sense, somewhere where you can delegate a task, attach a video, attach a checklist, maybe some notes on there, and then put it on someone's board. So this is what you're working on. And that visual way of delegating means that you can see exactly what somebody's doing. And you can have like priority columns and all the rest of it to make it even more information rich. But fundamentally, it's just like you can now see what someone's working on. But similarly, all of their recurring work you can actually put on there as well. So we have daily, weekly, and monthly tasks. And that means that every task somebody does can be put somewhere visually to know who is doing what, when, and how. Or sorry, who is doing what and when. And then we can then create the how. So as they next do it, say, right, record a video. And then they can basically log that onto their recurring task. You've got the first step of a system created. So you've got the who, the how, the what, the when, all created on your task board, and you just repeat that process. And it's not you as the business owner that has to do it; it's whoever is doing it. So
And
the more
somebody
people
else
you
comes
have,
in, it's right, here's your board. There
yeah,
you go.
fill it up basically. Yeah,
Amazing. I think it'd be really good to discuss. There's two things I'd like to discuss in this podcast. I know we're limited on time today. So those two things is one, I'd love to discuss, and then how you actually manage these team members. And like,
yeah,
how do you get that high performance management? Because I speak to far too many entrepreneurs that have tried to hire someone from the Philippines, from South Africa, wherever it may be, and
yeah,
they come in and they go, oh, they're just rubbish. They can't do it. I've tried three now, it doesn't work. So that's one, because I know that I speak to enough people to know when it's them and when it on occasion it could be the staff member, the team member, but actually 9 times out of 10 I actually find it's normally the entrepreneur. So how do we actually manage them? And the second is then communication. I want to talk about one of the quick wins I see, which is delegating things like communications, emails, WhatsApps, diary management, just all that noise that comes from just being a person and having administration associated. And I know you're very hot on that. So let's talk about management first, if that's okay.
yeah.
What are the systems, the frameworks people need in place to manage one of these virtual team members to high performance?
I wish I could say there was a golden or silver bullet that this is the one thing you need to do, but I don't think it is as simple as that. I think it is a combination of things, partly about the understanding of culture of the country you're hiring from, partly about leveling up your own management skills, understanding about how to actually deal with people and get the best out of people. And those are all the soft sort of skills that you need to just develop over time. And those things that you can't just learn overnight. There are some great books. There's a great book by Mark Horstman called The Effective Manager. I highly recommend that book. And a lot of our core teaching on management comes from that book and his podcast as well. But that's the stuff you just need to get on with and do. But the fundamental systems or the frameworks that I think are the biggest difference for ourselves and our clients and just put it in perspective. So internally we probably hired around 180 virtual assistants now over the past 6-7 years, and then our clients have gone on to hire hundreds and hundreds more because we one of the things we give people is our recruitment system. And so this has been tried and tested through hundreds and hundreds of recruitment cycles. And so preparing for the person you're going to hire, especially if it's the first person you're going to hire, so actually learning a bit about how do I record stuff, things like task boards and delegation, getting those things set up before you go through the hiring process. Means that when that person arrives, they come into a situation where it's not chaos. There is a bit of structure. Doesn't need to be perfect, but at least having somewhere to delegate and a way of delegating that works. Having those things, a few tasks at least, like already documented to a high level before they arrive, sets things off on the right foot. And this person coming in has the choice to work with you and the choice to work with somebody else. And if they come into you and things look serious, they look organized, they look professional, that they understand what they need to do and it's clear, that is the start of a brilliant relationship. Coming into a business where the business owner expects that person to basically save them from chaos is just, you may be very, very lucky and get a highly experienced person coming in who has the skill set. But 9 times out of 10, you're going to hire somebody who comes in and expects to be told what to do, because that's what you're hiring. You're not hiring a COO. You're hiring an assistant. You're hiring maybe a very experienced assistant, maybe even have managerial skills, but you're not hiring somebody to come and business consult for you and fix all your problems on from the inside, create your systems for you, and then create your business in effect for you. You're the business owner, so you have to keep on being aware of that and mindful of you're the one that has everything in the head. You have control over everything that happens in that business, and hiring the right people in the early stages is game changing if you leverage them in the right way and don't expect them to come and fix every problem for you without your input. So
Can I just ask on that?
yeah,
Because obviously, a lot of entrepreneurs they want that. They want that person. They think, oh, I'm going to hire an assistant and it's going to solve all my problems. Do
yeah.
those assistants exist? Can you get people that can come in the chaos and sort it out? Or have you seen entrepreneurs that are able to hire an assistant, but then they work very closely with them and manage to do it together? Like,
Yeah, I
how do
think,
you do that?
I mean, forget like the word virtual assistant, forget where you're hiring from. It's like if you can afford to hire somebody with the expertise, knowledge, experience, know-how, aptitude, integrity is also like all of those key things to come in and in effect build your business for you, then you're probably not at the stage in a business where you can afford that sort of person.
Hmm.
That's what startups do when they're funded. They hire the best people who build the business from a few ideas and some direction, whatever. But most of the people all the people I've ever worked with aren't in that position. They're in a position where they're the one trying to start the business and they desperately need help. And so I believe the easier option is to say, look, as a business owner, I can do most stuff. Like that's one thing that most business owners are good at. It's like we can just do everything. The problem is we haven't got time to do everything. So if we can create time for ourselves, we can fix more of the problems that are still outstanding. And then with that now increase business, hire more people, get more time. So for me, the fundamental thing to think about first, and the easiest thing to do is to hire a good, reliable assistant who can follow instructions carefully and get work done reliably time after time. Because there's lots of those people out there. So you might be super lucky and find, this superstar assistant, but it will be luck. And and if that person leaves because you're not giving them the level of pay or actual you're not professional for them or they're expecting something different, whatever, you're back to square one again, where it's really easy to find super reliable, consistent people who can just get work done. So if you are reliant on finding superstars, you're always going to be at risk of your business basically collapsing. Whereas if you get this fundamental stuff right, how can I get stuff that I'm currently doing, the time consuming stuff, off my plate, onto someone else's plate and get it done reliably? If you can perfect that bit, then as you elevate up, you delegate down more and more. And therefore you slowly build up your time freedom by actually offloading the stuff that you're doing. And at some point, you'll be able to hire in like a marketing expert who can take over a big part of the business, but they need to then repeat that process because they need to be freeing up their time. They need to be delegating down to elevate up. And so I believe that's a much more consistent, it's much more reliable way. It's easier, it's more reproducible than trying to rely on trying to find like the superstar ultimate virtual assistant or staff member who's going to save your day.
So step one, as you said, is to get to a place where they've at least got 3 to 10 tasks or things that they can do when they first come. They start and they've actually got a to-do list. They've got actions, they've got deliverables, they know what they should be doing. Then once you've onboarded them, you've gone through that process, you've taken them through, you've set them up. What is like the management structure you then follow on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual, quarterly basis to ensure that they're performing at the right level? Because I think another thing that happens is, you get an assistant, it feels like the best thing in the world. When people first come on, like they can do no wrong, but you get 3 months in, it's all of a sudden, wow, like, why have you messed up on that? How have you got that wrong? It's like, and that's where people press the red button. They go, this isn't working. But there's a structure in place, isn't there? And what structure do you advocate putting in place?
Yeah, great question, Josh. So a couple of things. So firstly, there's a couple of podcasts of our podcast that I recommend checking out. So Systemize Your Success, episode number 144, which is a proven management toolkit. Episode 25, which is how to give feedback. Episode 126, which is Holy Trinity company meetings. And episode 130, which is unlocking staff potential. with professional development. So those are basically going to cover in much more detail those episodes in much more detail of what like the frameworks that I'll talk about now. So first off is having supportive culture within your business and not and I talk to people like after 2 years. So when was the last time you had a meeting with your staff member? And they're like, I've never had a meeting with my staff member, like a Zoom one-on-one meeting where you're actually meeting them and talking to them. They just delegate work via either a task management tool or email. That work gets done, and that's the way the relationship goes. And they are well, it's unsurprising, I'll say, that those relationships haven't developed. That person hasn't become an integral part of the team because they're just doing tasks here and there. Whereas if you build up trust with somebody, it works two ways. You trust them, they trust you, and therefore you can get far more done with somebody by actually building up that relationship. And the way we do it is the Holy Trinity of meetings. So we have a daily stand-up meeting. So every single day we get together for if you just, like 5 minutes per person maximum. So if you've got one member staff, it'll be a 5 minute meeting maximum, or typically three minutes per person. And you're just going to say, well, what are your wins for yesterday? What are the challenges today you need help with? And what's your plan for today? What are you going to do? That just means that you've got a pulse on what everybody's doing in the business. You're connecting people that need, oh, you need to speak to that person, they can help you with that. So again, you're deflecting work coming to you as the business owner as well, if you've got a bigger team than a team of one. And you're supporting people on a daily basis. So they will not pest you during the day because they know there's a meeting tomorrow to answer the questions. Then we have something called a structured one-to-one. And this is a agenda-driven one-to-one meeting. Really simply, it's a half an hour meeting. It happens every single week at the same time every single week. And that is when we sit down, the manager and the direct sit down. The first 10 minutes is always over to the employee, to the direct, as they're called. And so the way I start those meetings is just to say, over to you. That's it. I don't ask them how they are. I don't see how the weekend went. Nothing. It's just over to you. It's their agenda. Nothing's going to get in the way of that. And then that person will talk about whatever they need to talk about. And just doing that one thing totally transforms the relationship because suddenly you are listening to that person's needs, even though 9 times out of 10, they're going to talk about work. But it's the 1 time out of 10, or maybe 1 out of 20, when they don't, and you're able to actually listen and understand that, well, that's why their work's not on point at the moment, because they're actually their, partner's going through a crisis or family members just died. And now I know about that, or I wouldn't have done before.
Do you think, can I just ask, do you because I always have a chit chat about the weekend and,
None of that.
you end up running out of time in the one-to-one. That over to you. Do you think I need to pre-frame that? Say, by the way, guys, I'm going to start by saying,
of course you do. Yeah. So we tell people. So we've got an email template that goes out, or a message template. We don't use email, but we've got a message template that goes out saying when someone starts in the company. And so it's part of our onboarding process. We have a recruitment system and we have an onboarding process. And one of the parts of the onboarding process is to prep people for their first meeting. And so that says, in this meeting, this is the agenda. You're going to go first, then it'll be me, and then we'll talk about future development, professional, development, whatever. And so they're well aware of what's going to happen. I even say on mine, I say, I will say over to you, and that's your cue to talk about whatever you want. But also on the first meeting, I explain it a bit and,
Cool.
take them through with a bit of hand holding. I don't expect them just to get it the first time. So first couple of weeks.
It's over to you, then you're going to do your bit. And then what's the rest?
10 minutes them, 10 minutes me. So do I need to give any feedback? Do I want to get just a check-in on some work they're doing? Ask specifically about existing work. I very, very rarely will ever delegate new work unless it just happens to be the spin-off of a conversation. But I won't use that meeting as a way to delegate. Delegation is done through task boards. It's done through project meetings. So the third type of meeting is a project meeting, which we'll come to in a second. But so the one-to-one is very much about helping them to get where they need to be, and for me to have time to give private one-to-one feedback away from anybody else.
Perfect. And then I love this, by the way. So this is all very powerful stuff. Do you want to talk about the third meeting? So the Trinity.
Yeah, just very quickly. So the third meeting is we call it the 5-star meeting. It's sort of based on Gino Whitman's level 10 meetings from Traction. And it's, again, a structured meeting with a fixed agenda, which we use an issues list, exactly the same as Gino Whitman, where We have these for a company meeting once a week, and then we have them for either departmental or projects. So if a project is basically going to last more than about 3 weeks, we create a meeting for it. It depends on the size of the project as well, but just ballpark. If it's going to last more than about 3 weeks, we have a specific weekly meeting for it because we don't want it to take over the general company meeting. And so the meeting's always the same. So we basically kick off, we talk about the goals of the meeting, how we're getting on, then we talk about any work that's previously been delegated, and then we talk about the issues. Issues is basically the core of the meeting. And that is anything that's come up in the past week that hasn't been so urgent, it had to be actioned previously, and it's put onto that meeting board. And what this allows, combined with the one-to-one and the daily stand-up, is that I very, very rarely will be asked a question through any other channels except for those 3 meetings, which means that I'm not getting interrupted because people know there's a time and a place. So if it's urgent, great, they'll ping me. That's not a problem. I don't mind it happening, but it just does not happen very much anymore because we've got these 3 things in place. So having the right things talked about in the right meetings at the right time with the right people saves huge amounts of time as well because you're not wasting people's time who's listening to stuff that isn't relevant for them. And also you're allowing people just to get on with their work without interrupting each other. So that's why we call it the Holy Trinity.
And I think there's a few points on that because I know there'll be people listening to this thinking, "Oh God, more meetings! Like more meetings in my diary. I've got more stuff to put in, more meetings." And even if I have one-to-ones every week, and it's not like I'm not pumped about the one-to-ones. I'm not, Monday, here we go, one-to-ones, fine. And it's not that I don't dislike that. It's not I dislike them. It's just like I like a free diary. That's what I like.
Yeah.
But what I've learned, particularly as well, when you skip the one-to-ones, when you don't have your project meeting in place, when you start skipping meetings, it's this false economy. And you think, oh, right, great, I've got a free diary, feels nice. A few extra questions, I can handle this. Then 3 weeks later, you realize you just missed 5 or 6 business critical issues that could have been so easy nipped in the bud 3 weeks ago at the team meeting, which then escalate into these massive things. And you're back in a crisis zone trying to sort 5 or 6 projects, solve loads of issues. And it's just, these are all just like proactive steps you can take every week and they actually save you time. Although it feels like at the time when you first put them in, wow, this is like a lot of extra commitment to my team.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I think and it is a mindset shifting from the solopreneur mindset of they're basically doing everything themselves. And so if they don't have time, they can't get anything done. And I was that for 15 years. That was ingrained in my soul, of basically, my time is the only reason anything gets done in the business.
Yeah.
So as soon as you start hiring and delegating, then actually the time in that meeting is, say it's half an hour or an hour, a week or whatever. Like that generates potentially 39 hours of work getting done that
Yeah.
not you.
Yeah.
And you've got to start looking at, okay, so if time is the biggest issue for me, then rather than getting your team to do new stuff, concentrate on getting your team to help you to do the stuff you're doing. Because the sooner you can start offloading more and more of the has to be done stuff, the more time you've got to then focus only on the nice to be done stuff or the need to be done in the future stuff. So when you get into that, then the pressure and the anxiety of I'm sat in this meeting, I just want to get on with stuff, it goes away. Because the stuff that I'm responsible for doing now, if I don't do it today and I do it tomorrow, it's actually not going to change anything but a day of progression, whatever. Whereas in the past, it was like, if I don't get this done today, we're not going to make this sale, or we're not going to, this thing isn't going to happen, or like the webinar won't be, whatever it is. Like there's so many things that if we can actually stop being involved in the mission critical stuff on a daily basis, then those meetings become far less feeling like they're actually taking us away. And in fact, they actually become like, I'm looking forward to that meeting because I've got an idea that someone else can then go and run with and to play with. That is going to save me 5-6 hours of research and messing around. It's only going to cost me 15 minutes of time to delegate it.
Love it. One of the before we finish, and I appreciate this is going to have to be a whistle stop tour, but I think a pain point for a lot of entrepreneurs is communication. It's noise, it's emails, it's WhatsApps, it's booking in meetings, it's diary management. And I've successfully delegated my emails for years, but I still want less of it. Like I don't want to see a single email. I don't want to respond to anything. And it's like, and diary management, conflicts, issues, still getting asked questions about it. And I think part of that is I've got too much going on in my diary, but I'd love to just get from your perspective, like how do we as entrepreneurs fundamentally get this off our plate, get diary management, get emails, get communications just off our plate, or have a minimal time input in it? What's the system you use and how do you have it set up?
Yeah. So this is something that I spent years and years and still spend time developing it even to this day because it's so critical. And I honestly I have a 15-minute meeting scheduled each day for my comms. And the only really reason I have that is because my ADHD brain, if I don't schedule it, it doesn't exist. And so I actually get my comms manager to sit in on that meeting with me, like to basically watch me do my email management. But actually what that typically entails is about five to 10 minutes work for me each day maximum. And that's covering every social media channel, every email. That's what's left for me to deal with. And so to go from the situation where I was doing everything myself to now where literally I just there's a few things that need either there's no process for it, it's something completely new, or it's just a personal thing that I have to deal with because it's it's directed at me. Then there's obviously a process in place. So there's a few things, a few podcasts I mentioned now, just in case we run out of time to go into detail. So uh, Systemize Your Success, again, at my podcast, number 56, why you need a comms assistant in your life. 167, mastering asynchronous communications. That's actually probably to do with management as much as to do with comms, but it's all very linked. Uh, Episode 185 is using a virtual assistant for social media messaging and notifications. So those three episodes will kind of cover again in detail what I'm going to do very quickly now. So I started with emails and I created basically a spreadsheet which we listed each email that came in either by typically it's just by subject and content. So what is the email about? So is it an invoice? Is it an inquiry, sales inquiry? Is it a subscription notification? Like it's just going through like one by one when emails come in, and then the action, what needs to happen. And that may be linked to an SOP that's being created. It may be a multi-step process. It may kick off an entire project, depending on on what type of thing it is. If it's a request for an invoice to be paid, it'll kick off a invoice processing system. So, but this obviously develops over time. But to begin with, it was just like a spreadsheet it's called a rule sheet. What the email's about, maybe who it's from, because it may be different depending on the sender, and then what we actually do with it. And then we link that also to an FAQ. So a lot of the queries we're getting in the early days were queries either about my content or about the courses or maybe about pricing or from clients, how do I do this? Where do I find that? And so we just created FAQs so that if any question comes in, rule number one is it a question? Yes, go to the FAQ. On the FAQ, search through it, and we started using a Google Doc that served us really well for years. We're just in the process of moving to an AI-driven knowledge base, and now with AI, I'd probably start there if you can afford it. There's actually at the time of recording this, there's a Zumo app called SimpleBase that's on a lifetime for like 60 quid on app Zumo, and it's called SimpleBase, and that's like an AI-driven knowledge base and ticketing app and all the rest of it. But so if you don't get that, just use a Google Sheet and you can just use Control F to find what you're looking for. And you're going to build out basically an FAQ. What is the question and what is the answer you want said? Combine the rule sheet and the FAQ and a comms assistant, and you're about 75% of the way there. That's it.
And then on those ones that you have to reply to, how does that work? Is there a filtering system and there's like a tab that says receive to reply?
Yeah, so we have basically within our task management system or app, we use Asana. We have a project called Unified Inbox. In that Unified Inbox, the email tasks are created from emails that are coming in. So one of our emails processing rule or comms processing rule is, can it be actioned by the person reading it in less than a minute? If it can, do it. If not, assign it into our Unified Inbox Unified Inbox, which is basically a project in our task management tool, and then assign it to the appropriate person. And then for me, I do it during the comms meeting because I said that means I actually do it every day. And so I just literally sit there and I'll go through and I will literally just tell the person on that meeting, say, right, reply to that person with this, put that out. No, actually, Monet can do that, or this can go to our tech support. I don't need to see that. Create the rule for that, update that rule, unsubscribe from that, done.
Nice.
So
So it's just
for
basically
me,
telling the team what to do with those things, and then hopefully they learn from each one, and each time it should get less and less and less and less.
it's not hopefully they learn, it's they update the system.
Okay.
So they add a new rule, they'll create a new FAQ. So every time something comes in, which I've had to be involved with, except for like today, there was a message came in from old clients saying, "Hey Steve, things are moving on with the business. Really want to get back involved with your community and everything." So that's something that I actually want to speak to that person personally. They've reached out to me personally. I want to say, "Yeah, cool." So I said, "No problem. I'll actually send them a message because I wanted to check a few things out." But we actually have a process for that. I was just as I was saying, we actually have a process. So typically, there's a process that says if an ex-client wants to speak to us, then you send them this message and the link to my calendar booking. So onto one of your other points before about calendar booking. So I don't get issues with calendar like scheduling because all of my calendars are automated. So any event in my calendar, as in like say I use Google Calendar, but it doesn't matter what you use. So if I create an event or a meeting, if I want someone to book a call with me, I give them my link and they book the call onto my calendar. It can't be booked on any existing meeting. If they want to reschedule that meeting or I need to reschedule it, I click a button and pick a new time that's available and it will reschedule it.
Use
Everyone,
Calendly for that.
pardon?
Which software do you use for that?
We use GoHighLevel, so
Okay.
it's inbuilt within our CRM. But yeah, we used Calendly for years. The only thing I don't like about Calendly, it's a bit technical, but you can't override what you've blocked out. Whereas Acuity, which isn't quite as nice to use, allows you to, and so does GoHighLevel, allows me as the owner to pick any time. So even if I've got a meeting booked, I can still pick that time manually.
Yeah.
And that's super useful because I block out all of my time.
Yeah.
So if I'm having I don't have many meetings on Mondays and Fridays, and so therefore I block them all out. But maybe now and again I'll make an exception. So it allows you to do that.
Nice. Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure. Any final nuggets to leave us with before we finish?
Other than yeah, just go and check out my podcast if you want any more detailed information on any of this stuff and loads more. Systemize your success on all your favorite podcast tools. That's
It's
it.
been a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Josh. Cheers.